Good morning. In our continuing series of videos on tire wear, handling, and alignment issues, today we're going to discuss the four main forces that we balance when we're trying to do an alignment. The number one force that we have to deal with is drag. Now, drag exists in the steer tires. These two tires are carrying somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 pounds each, depending on which kind of a line haul truck you're in. If you're in a dump truck, that could carry up 10,000 pounds each. That means that these two tires don't want to go anywhere. So there's a constant drag trying to stay still. The second force we have to deal with is thrust. Now, thrust comes from the drive axle. And all the drive axle wants to do is drive straight ahead. Now, if my thrust is balanced against the two drags, it'll go straight. But if the thrust is off center, and on air ride suspensions there's a way to adjust center, if it's off center, now I have more drag on one side than the other, and the vehicle will fall in the direction where there's additional drag. So one of the first steps in any alignment is to make sure that the drive axle is centered underneath the truck. Then you decide about aim. The third force we have to deal with is gravity. Now, gravity not only pulls this truck straight down, but because we don't drive on flat roads, it also has another effect. If we drove on perfectly flat roads, you could set everything up perfectly straight and it would be fine. But because we drive on a crowned road to let the water run off, and we tend to drive on the right side of a crowned road, the big G, or gravity, is always trying to pull the vehicle to the right. South Africa and Australia, where they drive on the wrong side of the road, it's trying to pull them to the left. Now we have to counter gravity. Now, many alignment shops will put a tapered wedge between the leaf spring and the axle on a steer axle on one side of the truck and attempt to twist the caster. Twisting the caster changes the amount of drag in the two tires and changes the way it goes. The problem is twisting the axle with load. As the load increases and decreases, it twists the axle and causes an unstable environment. It's also hard on the leaf springs and the shackles. What we've learned to do is to simply aim the drive axle just a hair to the right. Now, like aiming an outboard motor to the right makes the boat go left, or aiming the rear steer wheels on a forklift to the right makes the forklift go left, aiming this drive axle slightly right will push the front of the truck against the gravity and allow you to drive straight. It's not an unstable and it's not an intermittent thing because the power is always there. So we have drag, thrust, gravity on a single drive axle vehicle. Now we're going to complicate it and go to a tandem drive axle vehicle. With a tandem drive axle vehicle, if I got both axles perfectly parallel with each other and both of them aimed just slightly to the right, it would be like taking the straight-sided jar, put it on the ground and roll it, and it'll roll straight. Getting the two axles perfectly parallel creates the two smooth sides. The odds are, though, that you're not going to get them perfectly parallel. And with rubber bushings and airbags and 500 horsepower, things have a tendency to wiggle a little bit and change. So if you don't have them parallel, then you have what is called scrub. And the scrub between these two drive axles is like taking a tapered cone, lay it on the ground, and roll it. And the cone will roll in the direction of the narrow side. In other words, on this drive axle, the narrow side is on the passenger side. The scrub will cause it to go to the right, which agrees with the gravity, and now you've got a significant right pull. So what we've learned to do is aim the rear drive axle slightly to the right. Aim the front drive axle slightly to the left. This creates a narrow part of the cone on the left side, which counters the gravity, which allows the truck to drive straight. So when we are addressing alignments, we have four major forces that we have to deal with. Now these can be complicated if you've got a twisted frame, which will put more load on one front tire than the other. If you have a side swayed frame, which encourages all the offsetters and everything. If you have a brake dragging in one wheel position versus another. If you have an underinflated tire on a drive axle, which creates more drag. All of this can get complicated, but basically we're dealing with drag, thrust, gravity, and scrub. Those are your four main forces.